Hi there, Megan. Welcome. I wanted to ask you, my friend, before we begin, what is lighting up your heart at this time?
Oh, Michelle, this week, my heart has been on fire. I think for so many people I've spoken to throughout the last year, everybody is just so tired. And it's just been, we are tired of cycles of learning and growth and healing. And sometimes you just want some things to come together. And for me, that has been this week. I had three kind of items for myself for this entire year. So by the end of this year, I wanted to get my first keynote with my new topic out in the world, and I held that last Thursday. I
Yeah.
wanted to publish my book, which I am in talks, very close to finalizing that deal for the end of the year. And I also wanted to do an in-person podcast. I haven't done one of those yet. I've only done virtual, and I just got invited to one yesterday. And so here we are this week. We are only in March, and those were my three big goals for this whole year.
I love that, Megan. So I have to ask you if you don't mind.
Please.
Tell me your sign, if you would, if you
Yeah,
know
so
your
I
sign.
I am a Taurus.
Huh?
Yep, I'm a
And then
Taurus,
do
a
you
May
know,
4th Taurus.
okay, do you know where your rising and your moon is or
I
no?
don't remember, I don't have it on top of
Okay,
mind, but
friend, but you're a
I will just
Taurus.
tell you, Michelle, that I've plugged it all in. So my ChatGPT is named Yoda, and Yoda knows all of my birth sign information and my human design and all of that. And so it's just so many things point to this being a very important lived season. It's like, okay, for 14 years, you've been going through the work, and I'm very excited to share that with you today. But I'm also
Yes.
excited to say on the other side, there are moments where you do finally break through. Even when you're ready to think you don't, you finally surrender, and then things just they fall into place. And it's like, this is why I've been going through it all. It was very worth it.
Yes. See, that's super profound, Megan, because in this time that we're in, I feel like for so many folks, healing and growth, and it's no one's fault. It's how we've kind of been programmed within our culture, especially as Americans, that somehow there's a space that we carve out for that that's like really clean. And part of what we're going to speak about today is just the permission that your work really gives for us to be messy, right? What I really want while we have you for this time is to talk about how we can build a meaningful life in the face of trauma,
Mm.
right? Because, when we were backstage before we kind of came on, we were talking about that how people define trauma is so vastly, vastly different. Um, I in this week, we're sitting, so we're taping today, on March the 12th. This won't air for a couple of weeks, but we're sitting on this very profound cusp for so many of us that, as a Gen Xer in particular, I can tell you a very traumatic event that I went through in 2009 came back up in my body
Yes.
in this lost. And as somebody who works with the body, it took me by surprise because it was something that was an injury from Christmas that in my own ascension process just kind of headed my way this week. And I was like, whoa, when your acupuncturist tells you, and I've known my acupuncturist for like 20 years, Gil Ben-Ami. Shout out to Gil Ben-Ami. We're trying to get you on the podcast, brother. You said you're coming. But nonetheless, making I digress, he said to me, Michelle, usually like with trauma and with what you've been through, like it shows up in the lungs. He said, actually, yours is showing up in one of the deepest places I've ever seen in my career. It's showing up in your sacrum, like all the way down. He's like, so what you've done, my friend, is you've built this life in the face of some exceedingly traumatic events. However, now your body's reached this place where it can no longer coexist with the physiological vibration
Yes.
that I've retained from the trauma.
So
So,
all so true, Michelle. Yes, I am agreeing with you and
you
so,
know,
so true.
so even for those of us that go through trauma that go forward, this is so meaningful because the messy in the middle, I didn't know about back in 2009. Your book, your work, like I didn't know about that. So it was kind of that keep calm, pull it together, do the therapeutic work, right?
Yep, yep, you
And
got it.
forward motion
It's all of those things, and Michelle, I would
and so
say
much more.
there's so much more. Yes, there's so
That's
much more we
what
can
you
talk
have.
about, but I want to start with, you started out that question, posing the question of what is trauma?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give you a Webster dictionary definition. I'm going to give you the definition that I've learned for myself and that I've seen with those that I work with. Those are the people I work with. And for me, trauma really is any event that happens to you that fogs you and makes it fuzzy and keeps you from being your true self.
Beautiful
So to
definition.
me, that doesn't have to be physical. There are so many things across our lives that, especially in childhood, when we grow up, those little things, it doesn't have to be like you mentioned, I have a very severe chronic trauma background. And when people first meet me and hear some of that, sometimes they have a default of making me want to be almost a victim. I'm so sorry. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, your life has
Yes.
been so hard. And I can acknowledge that now that yes, I have had some unique hardships. However, I would argue that they're no harder than everybody else's journey. For
Right.
me, they were just my journey. And so to you,
Yeah.
they might sound hard because or extra hard because you haven't lived that journey. For me, that was the journey I was given. And I've grown to believe that all of us are here on this planet to become our best version of ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to confront the wholeness of ourselves. We can't just pick the parts of us that are healed and happy and we're excited to share with the world. There's a whole other part of all of us. I'm sure there's listeners right now that are listening and they have pieces of them that if anybody ever found out about, like the thought of that is paralyzing. Shame is just such a debilitating feeling and it just keeps us small. And in many ways, I believe our system in this country has kept us that way. I
Yeah.
don't believe the infrastructure that we've been taught is really here to get us to be our best selves. It's instead here to get us to produce the most and stay small. And so when I talk about messy, I'll just kind of give that a little context now. For me, that what happened was all my chronic trauma background, medical trauma right at birth, an alcoholic father. I was the oldest child, the oldest daughter, and so by 6 years old, I was very much sometimes having to take care of my mom and my
Mhm.
brothers after my father had one of his outbursts, and so my needs just got pushed down and down like so many people's, and so survival mechanisms were born out of that. And for me, some of those had helped me thrive. Perfectionism, made me a straight A student. I graduated top of my 8th grade class. I was the valedictorian. I was also top 10 of my high school class. And so straight A is always externally, people would have no idea what a mess I was behind the scenes. In my inner world and in my secrets, I started drinking alcohol in 6th grade. I had promiscuity, relationships in all the wrong places and things that I really didn't have words for, but they just things that broke my soul over and over again. So the things that I thought were helping me survive were actually creating more trauma. So fast forward to me in a nursery with my daughter many years later, and I was in the middle of the night. Here I was, married to a man, abusive, just like my father. Not a secret there. That's a very common pattern to repeat. And as I nursed her that night, for the first time ever, my inner voice got through loud and clear. I believe when I grew up, my inner critic had just taken over because of that need to survive. And so I very much needed that to be able to take care of everybody else and make me a people pleaser. But this night, holding my newborn daughter, that voice said to me, "You have to do better. It's time to do better." And I didn't know what that meant, but I did, or how I was gonna do it, but I did know that at the heart of it was if I didn't do better, I was gonna pass down the same wounds to my daughter. And that journey is what led me into digging into my mess and confronting it over quite a few years. And from that, a process unfolded that I now call my Unperfect Level Up framework. It's now my coaching framework, but it's essentially what I believe the steps that can help people learn to trust that inner voice, learn to have the courage to follow it no matter what, heal those parts in their body or their mind that are keeping them small, and essentially come home to themselves and love themselves fully. So then they're ready to live their purpose.
Yes, there's so much in all of this. Obviously, Megan, this has been your life's purpose and your life's work. And I just want to invite listeners into a space before we unpack some of that, that if we could just frame, sweet friends, that if healing isn't becoming who you were before trauma, but becoming who you were meant to be after truth, what would you change about how you're living right now today? So that's just really the space that I feel like, and just to pause and really let your body answer, maybe, in your heart before the mind does, because this isn't about perfection, right? This is about truth. This is about regulation. It's about real life growth and real life repair. And like Megan, what is so beautiful is the permission that you give the people that you work with to just be human, right? And I'm a humanistic, hypnotherapist. I am definitely person centered. And I feel like in the becoming messy, like the real meaning in trauma healing of becoming messy and that unpacking that one begins with that small voice or a very large voice inside of them that's saying, this is no longer like where we're going to reside, right?
That's right.
Where do you coach folks to head once that aha moment and the messy starts to unpack?
Yes, that's a great question. One quick thought, and then I'll answer that directly. But I love that you mentioned the word perfect because the word perfect
Mm.
comes up a lot in this topic, and very excited to share that I will soon be launching a whole new brand for our business that is called the Unperfect Life Collective. And what
Beautiful.
I am asked, so the unperfect life is a philosophy that I would love to help spread. I think it's so needed right now. And so it's the work that we are talking about to become whole. And so I will share kind of the next step of that to come whole. But then once you come whole, it's defining a life on your own terms and choosing, I say unperfect, choosing not to be bought into the perfect that we've been sold, because the perfect that we've been sold is not perfect for each of us. It's perfect for somebody else.
Yeah.
So unperfect is the calling for yourself to come home to yourself and live in a way that is unperfect, perfect for you. So very
Oh,
excited for that. And then
beautiful.
thank you, thank you. And the next steps. So I essentially have 7 competencies in my model, and
Yes.
those competencies are not necessarily in order. Some people you may find. So I'll just very high level share what they are briefly. So of the 7 competencies, we talked about let your inner voice lead. I always say if people are going to take one thing away from this in my work is make sure you know the difference between your inner voice and inner critic, and do whatever you need to do for yourself to have the courage to follow that. Because I will tell you, the times that it told me to leave a high paying paycheck, that was not easy. But because I've done this work, it was easier because I've learned to trust it so much. So that's one thing, is just getting solid on that. But then the other competencies are examine your childhood as an observer. This came to me by loving my daughter at first, and then the other children, I now have stepchildren. My love for them actually started allowing me to love my inner child. It helped me. All of a sudden, I could see themselves at the ages I was in these situations with abusive dad, with my own alcohol. And who was I to carry shame? I would never shame my children for decisions they made at 7. And so I just share, and it might not be as far back as your childhood. Maybe some of your listeners, some of their biggest shame might be in college, might be their
Mhm.
trauma might be at a different age, but it's being able to look at that as an observer who is nothing but pure love and compassion. From there, you're able to value the lessons, especially the messy ones. You're able to, because you're now looking at that shame with that compassion lens, you can now look at the threads of some of that. For me, it was toxic relationships.
Mm.
It was feeling miserable at work, crying at the gym. You just start seeing the things where you just kind of feel broken in the world, and you can just look at them and start seeing a thread of what they might be being teaching you. And then from there, I love this one. Once you do those first few, it's embracing the magic of the universe. And I feel like your conversation and podcast is so perfect for this. I feel like you very much know this, but when you align with yourself and heal these wounds, the universe rises up to meet you. Signs come. There's just a flow to life that until you do the work, you would have thought was crazy. People didn't believe me when it was first happening to me. And then from there, you go into healing your own. So when we go, the last one is lean into your unique healing needs. You mentioned earlier in the conversation body work. I just discovered body work this year. So I've been doing this work forever. I've been getting massages, I've been doing meditation, but this year I found two modalities of body work: somatic experiencing and craniosacral massage.
Yeah.
And they were I feel like my final piece of releasing the shame and the hurt in my body. It just has been this whole new level up. And then the last
Yes.
two, and then I'll wrap this up of the competencies, but the last two really are getting the courage to share your story.
Mhm.
It could just be with one person. It's essentially this step where it's like unapologetically love yourself is what I call it. And it's where you can set boundaries. You just hold whatever it is to be true for yourself. You figure out how to hold it, and you figure out how to share it a little bit and have courage to release it to the world. And then the last one is pass it on. As you do this work, it truly becomes contagious. So many people I know that do work like I do, you might relate to this, Michelle. Wasn't necessarily planning on ever calling myself a coach.
Sure.
However, people kept saying to me, "Oh my gosh, you're my coach. You're my informal coach. And
Yeah.
what's your secret?" And it was just me living my life. And
Yeah.
that's contagious. And so let your light shine bright,
Mm.
and you're going to then ripple across other people, and that's how I believe we spread self-love across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that so often, Megan, the order of operations, right, kind of gets lost along the way. And I think that one of the first things, because, as Americans, we've sat at a very interesting juncture over the last 6 years. As many people, we have listeners across the globe, 35 countries, 36 countries. So, like, we're all sitting at this juncture. But I know that in America in particular, a lot of our nervous system regulation, with a lot of polarization and a lot of biofication that some believe is occurring on our planet. I personally don't share that view. I believe that any kind of mindset work is a choice. But nonetheless, at Heart and Light Living, and also, even just on my colon hydrotherapy side of what I do with folks, your nervous system has to be super regulated before reparation in terms of like even being able to receive, be it coaching support, be it in conversation to share your story.
Mm.
right, with folks. And I just really wanted, if you could, like, just you talked about kind of that unperfect,
Yeah.
right, life collective. And like, what would be your top tip? Like, obviously, you've learned about cranial sacral, somatic breathing.
Yeah.
Is somatic breathing your go to regulate? Like, is it 4-6 breathing? What's your
Yeah.
go to, Megan?
Yeah, so I do a mix. So for me, one of my favorite when I feel and one I just want to agree with the nervous system. To me, up until
Hmm.
a year ago, that wasn't necessarily even part of the language I used a ton.
Ah,
However, the level up I've just gone to, and I now say no matter what, wholeness first. And what I mean by wholeness first is like you can't build a house on a crappy foundation. And here we are trying to build our livelihood on crappy foundation. We need to fix the foundation first. We need to address it. And so wholeness first essentially is getting your nervous system to a space where you control it is it's a little bit unshakable, I feel like not I will admit, as much as I've done this work, I am not the, most enlightened guru, and I sometimes get shaken, it's like sometimes, but in general, I pretty much flow, and I really no longer think of things in terms of or good or bad, it's just is, and it's some of those quotes we've heard, and until you live it, you don't fully get it. And now here I am, and it's like, yes, it's just all I can control is my well-being and my wholeness, and so, just like you're saying, for me right now, and this is some of my messy, a little I'll just tell my for my own techniques, my week does not look like a typical work week. I take a lot of naps. I take a lot of baths, and I will own that that's a very privileged thing to be able to
yeah,
do. Not
totally.
everybody has the time for that. However, I do work all hours of the night. Sometimes I'll be up late at night doing my, actual podcast build. A lot of times I'll be doing it on a Saturday. Essentially, however your schedule looks, I believe instead of prioritizing everybody else's asks of you, it's prioritizing your wholeness first because that's where you can lead the most. So whatever that looks, and so for your listeners, you carve out, you look at your schedule, you block time where you can, and whatever your body says it needs in the moment, you give it to it. You give it to it above all else because your inner voice knows what's best every single moment. So it's not
Yeah.
like I schedule a nap for tomorrow, but at some point, if a nap is needed in my future
Yeah.
because I am just losing it and my nervous system is a wreck, I'm gonna follow that gut and I'm gonna make that happen.
Yeah, no, it's super important, and just that invitation for our listeners out there. I used to actually, when I was going through a significant healing, I was blocking out scheduling times to rest my body in between coaching and being with clients, and I was really private about it. And now I openly share with clients because I don't work a traditional schedule either very, very often. And folks will say to me, "Oh my gosh, Michelle, like you work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m." And I said, "No, but what you don't understand is that coming from like a Spanish family, I like to take a middle of the day.
Yep.
I eat my big meal. I meditate. I pray. I can actually catch up if folks have been running late. Like there's a knowing about how our systems run. And that's really the place to invite yourself into that learning, because then and only then can you begin that reparation, right? Because one
Mhm.
of the things that I think is like once you've had trauma, and I'll tell you something funny, Megan. We had Richard Bandler on a couple of months ago, and Dr. Bandler had shared that for somebody he had been working with, trauma was this guy's like private jet came to him like wrong. Like just the delivery, like there were just multiple like line items that were just incorrect.
Yep.
And his particular client was like, "Oh my God, I can never do this again." And like it was for him a rather traumatic response. And so, like, obviously, trauma at different levels from significant things, war. I mean, we can all go to what the worst traumas are. I don't need to help anybody do that. But what I would like is to talk about how the fracturing of identity, right? And self-trust, because you actually have turned this kind of upside down and on its ear as your model, because you've rebuilt self-trust in very real practical ways and an identity that is filled with meaning. How do we do this in, like, obviously snippet short ways that listeners could begin to kind of have that unconscious mind tickled a little bit, like,
Yes.
it's
You're
interesting.
saying all the words, I think, Michelle. I think you and I are very aligned because to me, it's becoming you're curious the most about yourself.
Oh,
I
yeah.
very much think that we've been taught that it's selfish to put ourselves first. And that's another thing that I have flipped. And I believe that by putting yourself first in the lens of curiosity and just constantly wanting to know what makes you you, it's what gets you to that wholeness. It's what gets you to the ability to dig into that and know truly who you are. For example, for me, we just talked about ego and for me, and identity. And for me, for so much of my life, because I felt so broken, my body was physically broken. I've had, massive limb lengthening surgeries and I have scars all over my body. I just have a lot I have a lot of self-shame that I had to grow up with, and so the way I found identity was very much by perfectionism, by achievement, and so for so long, my identity was wrapped up in what other people thought of me, by titles, by salaries.
Mm.
The very first time I left a corporate job, when I was doing this work and my inner voice told me to, it was a very public job and I was known in the industry. And at a very young age, my friends always joke because I was like one of the first people in our industry known on Twitter and I was at Meg Dawson and that was a thing. And it's like that made me feel good. That
Yeah.
felt good
Sure.
to be recognized and known. When
Sure.
I left that job, I lost that knowing I lost that identity, I lost that piece of me, well, then who am I?
Oh, right.
And so I think it's those times where you have ego death, and I talk a lot about not letting those break you, and this work that we're talking about, those competencies I shared a little while ago, I have tools where I can help assess people where they're at with each of those, and it's a fluid thing. Sometimes you might be strong in a few, and then maybe you have to refocus on them, but when you use those competencies, that I believe that makes you a master of you, and that
Yes.
wholeness then knows that simply by being you is the only identity you need. And I believe we just have to go through some ego deaths. Just like the example I shared, I've had
Mhm.
lots of those in my lifetime where, wife was one, yeah, and I had to leave a marriage and I had to
Mhm.
shake that title of wife that I grew up thinking was the most important role I was ever meant to play until the role of motherhood taught me that that wasn't true. And so it's
Yes.
just getting to the point where you drop all the titles and you recognize that you are worthy, that you are loved, that you are whole just by being Michelle, and that's all you need,
Yeah.
and then when you come from that place, you can be anything then, because you're not tied to the outcome, because at the center of it, you'll be okay if the job doesn't work out, you'll be okay if the relationship doesn't work out. Not to say there's not sadness in those things, but at the end of the day, you are whole simply as you, and that is the most powerful thing that one can be.
Yeah, everybody else is taken, right? That's the old joke. So you can only
Exactly.
be you. But, one of the things that we talk about here in this space is that the mantra really needs to become it's okay.
Yeah.
Just in terms of whatever might come our way, the first response from within, because how we respond, right, is going to be the footing that we kind of set off on down the path of whatever this
Exactly.
experience is that we and God universe have
Yeah.
ordained together for
Exactly.
ourselves, right?
Exactly.
And one of the reframes that I'll do for folks that work with me is rather than selfish, because so many of us, this word, right? Like selfish, like especially
Yes.
as women,
Yeah.
oh, that's so selfish of you.
Yeah,
Like it's such a
exactly.
derogatory. And what I would say is that I feel like the reason that that word came to be is because when we're not fully in our self full or full self, however
Mhm.
you want, your aspects, your fragments, your these bits and pieces, these shards of self, and that your higher self actually knows that you're only being these vestiges and echoes of it. So,
Exactly.
how can you really be self full or full self?
Yeah,
Right?
and it is. This is it. And this is the work that this is the in my opinion, it's these competencies. It is getting so comfortable in your skin that you can
Mhm.
just own that. And that's going to look a little different. There's going to be different tools for each of us.
Yes.
However, that inner voice is the number one part of it, but it's healing anything that's a blocker for that. Once you get curious, you identify your own blockers and your
Mhm.
own areas where it's like, gosh, I felt a little small in this situation. Why? Why is that? Where did I feel it in my body? It's
Yeah.
just that self kind of assessment. And sometimes people that don't know me very well, if they've seen me kind of beat myself up a little bit after maybe a presentation didn't go exactly how I wanted. And I always say, oh, I'm coming from a very whole place of love. I'm fine. I analyze because I always want to be evolving into my better self. It's not performative. It's where I know my
Yes.
soul is meant to grow, and that doesn't feel bad. I mean, to me,
Right.
sometimes it's as simple as that. In any given moment, if you can check in with your body, what feels good and what doesn't, and if you constantly have to be doing the things that don't feel good, there's something there to work through. And if you feel like when you're doing the things that make you feel best and other people judge those things, make you feel little for those things,
Yeah.
then you have the wrong people in your life.
Yes. Absolutely. So there's we've been unpacking and kind of moving through like
Yeah.
lightning, and that leads us actually literally to making something that we do with everybody is we're just gonna do like a lightning round. It's
Mm.
fun
Yes, I
of
love these. I do one
questions.
of these on my podcast too. These are my favorite. So I
I
love it.
love this. Okay,
Yes.
great. And so like please feel free to answer from the gut. You don't need to overthink. There's only right answers here, Megan
You
Dawson.
got
That's
it.
all. One myth about healing, Megan.
That it has to be linear,
Yes.
one and
Yes.
done, and that's yes, that's it.
Yes. One daily practice for better self regulation.
For me, that is some type of water. A long shower is one of my favorites. So some type of stillness is what I go to. I know that looks different for other people, but just
Hmm.
some type of stillness. So you're tapping into that little voice.
Yes. I love that. Insight or consistency? Which one matters more, Megan?
I'm 100% insight. I am 100% for me. That is just I am a go with the moment. And I feel like I'm answering too much, but anyway,
No,
I
no,
feel
no.
like
You can keep
oh,
going.
yeah, I feel like for me, it's insight, but I guess I would say that the consistency to get the insights, right? So it's kind of a
Just
hard one. Once I
totally.
start to
No, this
talk
was a tough question.
that's hard because I do have I have consistency with the practices to be able to get the insights, but for me, that's about the only consistency in my life, is that I have a lot of freedom in my life because, my intuition, it just comes instantly, and it's just so day by day, my all of my data inputs and everything are guiding me insight at a time, so I really can't overplan.
What informed you most in your own life, Megan, about your intuition?
Oh gosh, that's a good one for me most. One thing that I talk about a lot is the book, The Celestine Prophecy.
Uh huh.
The book for me, that was my entry point to spirituality. And I always say any book I believe finds us at the right time.
Yeah.
And just for me, I was at that point where I was in that bad marriage. I had been making all those bad mistakes. I had had that calling in the nursery telling me I needed to do better. And I found that book around then. And for me, that was such an important launch pad, shifting me towards this mindset.
Wow, beautiful. One sentence for someone who might find themselves in fresh trauma right now.
Mm. Be still, love yourself. It's all going to be okay. And there's no rush.
Beautiful. Yes. One sentence for someone losing hope.
Mm. Gosh, someone has in hope. I'm always used to talking in messy. This one feels like fresh for me. In hope, in hope, I would say ride that frequency.
Yes. Yes. I always answer these questions that I write for myself, just so
Yeah,
you
I
don't
love
get
that.
my
These are great
question there.
questions. I love it.
But I
Yes,
do.
ride that frequency. I'll tell you, frequency, once you do this work,
Yes.
frequency is my favorite. Whatever I can do to keep my frequency up. And then it's kind of like a chicken before the egg, because then you just feel more hopeful because you're just in the mindset to do it. So in anything, keep that frequency there. Hold it.
Yes. Yes. Hold the note. What is your definition, Meghann, of a meaningful life?
A meaningful life is unperfectly you and all that you want to deliver to this world.
Yes. 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 I love this because, you know, and I'm speaking to women and I'm also speaking to men because men have their own set of perfectionist standards
Me too.
that they've been enculturated to exist by, right?
Exactly.
Um, I think that really honoring our identity in the fullness of who we are
Mm.
is probably, I think, one of the most salient things that we can actually do to get ourselves to a healing and growth point in the face of trauma or even not in the face of
That's what I
trauma.
was gonna say. I think it's the most valiant thing we can do, period. I don't think
Yes.
anything comes close to that. I think that's our
Yes.
reason for being here, is that.
Okay, I'm going to add one more question,
Sure.
Meghann, because you're super smart, and I know that this is going to be interesting. How do we, in one sentence, teach our children to do this?
We model it.
Yeah,
We be the light first.
we be it.
We
What we
be it.
be is
We
what
be
comes.
Yeah, I didn't share this earlier, Michelle, but it's like the work I do essentially is a 3-phase, and it's essentially becoming. So the becoming is messy, which we've talked about.
Yes.
The next part is being sovereign. And so if you think of yourself as a parent, it's going from, you're just practicing in this life, but keep trying to be more and more you. And as you do that, eventually you get to the point where you just get to be those things. But then life keeps happening and you keep learning. And eventually, I love I am statements. I am whole, I am love, I am peace. Those to me, if you model that to your children, you are setting them up to be bold in their life.
Yeah, I feel like these kiddos today, they know
They
so
do,
much more.
right?
The little ones.
They do. And we've talked about this in my house a lot. I have teenagers, I have college age and senior in
Yes.
high school and junior in high school, and they very much. I don't It's not necessarily. And I don't know, maybe part of that has been the household we've modeled. Some of
Yes.
it is the schools are different and the community and the language we all now have for this, these topics. When I was in my household growing up, we didn't talk about these things. So all of that has added up in some way collectively for the next generation to just know some of this before us.
The modeling. I think that's and it's a gift to us, the parent, as we are giving ourselves grace, as we are giving ourselves the blessings of the knowledge that we've acquired, living the life that we have. And I think, Megan, without knowing that you might be a Gen Xer like
That's
I
true.
am,
You are right on, Michelle.
right? And so, like, the X marks the spot. We're kind of this bridge, I think, between the old world and the new world. And
Mhm.
so, I always want to invite that intergenerational dialogue that we can include our children in, because I can tell you this, and you know this, Megan, from coaching, our millennial clients and our Gen Z clients, for them, they're already there. They're already teaching there because they had the gift of either the boomer parents,
Yes,
right? Or the Gen
exactly.
Zers, like who had us. And, this is the thing, y'all, that we are going to be living in a world right now that is rapidly transforming and rapidly changing in the global, in the geopolitical. But also, I would like to invite people in to realize that the spiritual and the emotional and the embodiment, our entire universe is in a rapid ascension process. And healing and growth can always happen simultaneous. Ask any child that has growing pains that's out there running track or playing hockey or doing their cheerleading, that even in the hard, we can still find our happy and we
Mhm.
can still find more, most importantly, because happy, and I'm sorry, I'm going to cuss, Megan, is a bunch of BS. It's a
I
bunch of
agree, I
belief
agree. I
systems.
say it too sometimes by accident, but I
Right,
know
right,
what you
right.
mean. There's not the right word. There's
Right.
not I don't know what other word.
It's not the right word. I
Yeah,
think of it as a joy
right.
of just our own existence.
Exactly,
Nothing
exactly.
external,
That's right.
right?
Just right.
All
Yes,
from within. And so it's
exactly.
just, I want people to really, possibly even for those listening that might be for the first time entering a space of how can I have meaning? My life has been a bunch of BS, like up
Exactly.
until now. Just allow yourself the curiosity.
Exactly.
It
Yes,
just,
that's it. That's
it's
it, and it
all.
really is that's all, and I, first of all, I just wanna cheer for people when I hear they're having those thoughts. Like, for me, if I'm out somewhere, I'm one of those people constantly talking to strangers, talking to the people on the plane, talking to, because I wanna spread this message as far and wide as I can,
Oh
and when I
gosh,
hear
yeah.
people say that, like, "Oh, I thought life would be better than this," or "I've done all the right things and life still sucks," or "I married the perfect person," I invite those curiosities because and you don't have to solve it in a big way. I love your
Mhm.
question, we talked happiness and we got to joy. For me, my words at any given moment, I wanna feel peaceful and I wanna feel free. Peaceful and
Mhm.
freedom. Like, that
Mhm.
is my and I want that for everybody.
Yeah.
And a feeling that I get that helps that is the feeling of awe. I always say my Jersey accent comes out a little wonky, but like awe, like when you're looking at a mountain or like, and
Mhm.
so I'm constantly very purposeful to bring awe into my day. It's just it might be music I listen to, it might be going for a walk and just looking at nature, but I know what it feels like in my body to feel awe. And so all
Completely.
I focus on is giving myself that feeling. I mean, it makes it that simple.
Yeah, this is so incredible because folks have been saying lately to me a whole lot that, Michelle, I just crave this level of simplicity.
Mhm.
And this is kind of really like the last like talking point that I really want to engage like listeners as well as with the benefit of your expertise, Megan, that in terms of simplicity, okay?
Mhm.
Because trauma, just the word,
Exactly.
right? I mean, I, personally, I tense up,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's one of the first things that I will work on. If a client is comfortable with that word, a-okay. But how is it that we can move from that space to this space?
Yes. Oh, it's such a good question, and I think it's very much the facilitated conversation you're bringing forward today because I believe it's starting with what your vision is for the future, and you're
Mhm.
and you're checking with how much you're living that right now. And so
Mhm.
that doesn't bring the word trauma in at all. We could talk about that topic with anybody. And then that then gets into if there's a disconnect between your vision for your life and how you're currently living, that allows such a curiosity conversation to figure out why. And then you can dig in and start identifying that simplicity. And I have to share a quick
Yes.
story because this was just as you say, so many people are using that language. My daughter is starting college this August. She's moving out to
Mhm.
Boston, and I live in Wisconsin, and my son's already out in Boston. So Boston is getting our whole family out there. And she's always been talking about, being a doctor. And very much for many years, it was like she wanted to make a lot of money. That was her vision for her life. She just wanted a job that made her a lot of money. And she came home just out of the blue the other night as I'm working on the rebrand for the website. I hadn't even told her yet all of the vision for the Unperfect Life. And just out of the blue, and I would add, she is she definitely has some intuitive abilities herself.
Yes.
Very much,
Yeah.
very often she brings a conversation forward that's going on in my world and she brings it up
Mhm.
first. And she says to me, Mom, I'm thinking as college nears, I don't really want to be rich. That's not really what I want. I
Yes.
want what I want, and she described this vision. She said, "I just want this, like, simple house, and, it's green trees and walking paths, and if I could just have a horse," you know? And so it's like, wow, Mara, follow that and never lose that, Just keep following and do what you need for that. Go to college and try it and see where that leads, but if at any point that's not the path meant for you, you
Yeah.
do what you need to do to bring your vision into reality and never leave that, and I'm not gonna try to talk you out of that. You know your gut, and that's telling you what you want for your life.
That's exactly it. Her heart and her light, her soul answered that. And I'm
Exactly.
just intrigued at like this quest almost for simplicity. And like one of the things I keep sharing with folks is you don't have to quest after it. That's
Yeah,
part of the gift of it is
yeah,
it's always there. You just have to choose to tap it.
yeah.
And so like for me, like one simple act, right? Because like we had an ice storm in Nashville and like we were living like the Amish for 12 days with a generator. And I realized that just the act of turning on a light,
Yeah,
okay, gave
exactly.
me this level of simplicity that I was in such gratitude for this light being able to read my book now once the sun had set.
Mm.
So it just
Simple.
might be something that was taken away from you for a period of
Yes,
time, like electricity,
yeah,
and it's
I believe
returned to
it.
you. You
Yeah.
know, like simplicity could be staring at a candle and just gazing. Simplicity could just be looking at your child that you love and getting this big smile on your face or your
Mhm.
frequency shifts, right? Simplicity could just be buttering your toast just
Oh,
perfectly so because
yes.
that square of butter was the right exact
Right?
size. Like
Yes.
the gratitude in the simple, I think, is something that the collective consciousness is actually craving right now. And so, Meghann Dawson, this has just been an honor, a pleasure. And I feel like I've made a new friend today.
I feel that way too, Michelle. Thank you for having me. I've just loved our time together.
Thank you so much, Meghann. And if you could tell our dear listeners the best way to reach you and about your works and about what this exciting becoming is with the publisher, which is your next meeting. Shh, we're not
Yes.
going to tell anybody much
Oh,
more.
yes. No, I'm proudly sharing that
Yay.
I've
Okay.
always known
Thank
in
you.
my heart that my book so I finished my first book last year. It's gonna be part of a three-part series, and it's the beginning is messy the becoming is messy phase of the first part of my life, and so essentially, it's the origin story of myself and my chronic trauma background and how I overcame, goes much into detail of that little night in the nursery. And so stay tuned. Becoming is Messy is the title, and that will be out later in the fall of this year. More stay tuned for that. But to stay up to date, I just suggest if listeners go to meghannDawson.com. My name is spelled a little wonky. It's from the book The Thornbirds, if anybody's ever read that. Meghann is Meghhann. So meghannDawson.com. and sign up for the newsletter there because in the upcoming weeks, I will be relaunching a brand new brand, which is the Unperfect Life Collective. And we'll be rolling out lots of fun stuff from individual resources, cohorts, keynote speaking availability, and then, of course, details on the book rollout.
Oh, Meghann with two N's, Dawson. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing time and space with us today. And dear listeners and friends out there, please remember to lead with your heart, liberate, integrate, ground, harmonize, and trust. Bring your light forward and always, always, always remember, come home to you. Peace be with y'all. Thank you now.